Tuck and Sons were London art dealers who had purchased copyright to this drawing called Sounding the Charge, a sketch of a cavalry bugler. They owned the copyright as soon as they bought it from the artist, but they didn't actually register their copyright straight away. Priester was a specialist printer located in Berlin, Germany. Tuck and Sons contracted with Priester to print 2,000 copies for them to sell. Unbeknownst to them, Priester also made additional pirate copies. Some time after the prints were made, Tuck and Sons registered their copyright. They became aware that Priester was selling the pirated prints in England, drawing away some of the customers that they might otherwise have had. Needless to say, they were unimpressed, and they sued for damages under the copyright statute, and in particular under Section 6, which imposed a substantial penalty of £10 plus forfeiture of the pirated materials if the defendant knew that the copies had been unlawfully made. To determine the case as a result, it was necessary for the court to construe that provision. The Master of the Rolls, Lord Esher, outlined the approach to be taken when construing a provision which imposed a penalty. He said, "We must be very careful in construing that section because it imposes a penalty. If there is a reasonable interpretation which will avoid the penalty in any particular case, we must adopt that construction. If there are two reasonable constructions, we must give the more lenient one. That is the settled rule for the construction of penal sections." On this occasion, because the copies had been made overseas and outside the jurisdiction of English law, and because the copies had been made before the copyright had been registered, he found it impossible to say that the copies had been made unlawfully. As a result, he was not able to impose the penalty prescribed under the statute. All was not lost, however, for the plaintiff. The court did find that the contract between the two parties included an implied obligation on the part of the printer not to make additional private copies of the picture. Tuck and Sons were therefore entitled to damages. In more modern times, the rule that penal provisions must be construed in favour of the defendant has fallen somewhat out of favour, but as an underlying appeal to fairness, it still has much to recommend it.